The following story has been brought to you by StoriesToInspire.org.
And I'm reminded of the story that Rabbi Weinberg used to say about his own father, about this Weinberg, that he was living on the Lower East Side of Manhattan, and he was, of course, Yerachmiel, had just come from Eretz Yisrael, and he'd go around collecting money for the Aniyei Eretz Yisrael on a regular basis. He didn't forget his brethren in Eretz Yisrael. So it happened once that he met a fellow on the street who had come from Europe, who was an immigrant, and this person who met Rabbi says, "I'm very angry at you." He said, "Why angry at me?" He said, "Because I know that you went around recently collecting to people in the different buildings in the Lower East Side, and you didn't come to me." He said, "And if I'm very angry at you," well, that's a very different reaction that some people might have. So he says, "Why are you angry at me?" He says, "Because I know the reason you didn't come by to my apartment to ask me for my money." He said, "Why is that?" "Because you know that I stopped keeping Shabbos, and you're not going to take money from a Mechal Shabbos." So Rabbi was stunned by this. He said, "Well, first of all, it's not true. The money that I collect is pikuach nefesh, the people literally starving in Eretz Yisrael. If you know the history of Eretz Yisrael, that's exactly what was happening prior to World War II, during World War II. So he said, it's pikuach nefesh would have come. But tell me, why are you Mechal Shabbos? You sound like, a Yid who comes from a tremendous background." He says, "Not only do I have a background, but I went to yeshiva and I even know how to learn." He said, "Really? So why don't you keep Shabbos?" He said, "Because I got sick and tired of losing my job, being fired every Monday, because the signs in the sweatshops, the Lower East Side in those days used to say, if you don't come in on Saturday, don't bother coming in on Monday. And every Monday I'd come in, I'd get fired because I didn't come in on Shabbos. And I watched my family literally starving away. So what I did was, I just decided to cash it in. I couldn't do it anymore." So Rabbi asked him, said, "I want to ask you a question. Do you work on Friday night?" He said, "Of course not." He said, "So why don't you keep Friday night?" He said, "I never thought of that. Maybe you'll keep Friday night. Just keep Friday night and see what happens with that. If you say the rest is, and I'm not saying that you're allowed to chas v'shalom work on Shabbos, but Friday night you have no excuse at all. Just because you don't keep on Shabbos, why should you keep Friday night?" He said, "You're right." And the next Friday night in the shul Rabbi Weinberg daven, this Jew appeared. And guess what? He came the next Shabbos morning as well. Because ultimately he realized what Shabbos really, really was. If you start to do something right away, on the spot, he said, he's going to keep Friday night. Look what it led to. And eventually he embraced his Kedusha completely. So I tell people when they're becoming frum very often, it's difficult to do Shabbos. I say, why don't you start Friday night? Not even the whole Friday night. You can start with keeping 1 hour of Shabbos. Try not to smoke 1 hour in Shabbos. Rabbi Salanta used to do that. All the Gedolim used to do that. And eventually they can come closer and closer, but you have to start with something. It's very nice to make it easier for people, but they do have to start right away. You have an Osiris, you got to start. So purify yourself with action. Take action. Kaddish or Chatz. The Vav HaChibur, immediately jump into action. You have a Kaddish moment. You have a moment where you're inspired. Then or Chatz, jump into it right away. Do something.
Enjoyed this story? Come again. Bring a friend. StoriesToInspire.org